So welcome everyone to the 2021, we're calling it, annual meeting of the Chisago-Lindstrom Lake Association. Here we go, we have a couple of special guests tonight. We have Jerry from the Lid, and we have our sheriff and deputy who are responsible for water. So they'll both be giving short presentations and answering some questions from y'all. So welcome. I'm the president, Dan Leyden. Vice president is Craig, who is in the back. Our Vice President Craig. Treasurer is Steve, who you met at the door. And our current secretary is Mary Kay Ripp, who's also at the door. And then I mentioned our special guests. So I also wanted to welcome a member of our subcommittee. You'll notice our subcommittees are basically our officers, and that's just because with COVID last year, we really didn't have any meetings other than the executive team. So we really have lots of open positions, and we'd really like to get the association more active moving forward, do more things, and so we need more help. So if anyone is at all interested in volunteering, please come forward. We have some corporate sponsors, although corporate sponsorship is a little weird because we just extended everyone last year, so we've had one corporate sponsor renew for this year, and they're actually a new corporate sponsor. So these are the corporate sponsors that we have had and we hope to have again. And so our newest corporate sponsor was Anderson's Ice Cream Shop, and this was great. She made us their tip jar recipient in February, which was actually pretty significant. You wouldn't think February would be a great month for ice cream, but we actually generated quite a bit of ice cream tip money. And so she is, Anderson Ice Cream is now one of our corporate sponsors, and it was really great. So here's the agenda for tonight. We're gonna talk about loon rafts just for a minute, and then we're gonna go into Chisago County Sheriff, then a year in review, financial review, weed treatment, the Lid, then talk a little about recreation, and then at the very end, we're gonna do elections. So first, we wanna talk about loon rafts. So it was a fun project that we were able to get started actually last year. We had an Eagle Scout come forward, Nolan Huffman, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, but he made 3 loon rafts for us. The Lake Association paid for the materials. We got discounts from Lindstrom Hardware, which was fantastic. You can see one of the loon rafts by the door as you entered into this space. It's on the outside. There was some muskrat stuff on it, so we didn't want to bring it inside. The reason we did that is as it's so obvious, especially this year, our lake levels fluctuate a lot, and that makes it really hard for loons to nest. They're really particular about their nesting habitat, and if the water, their lakeshore comes in or out a lot, they may abandon their nests. So having a floating platform allows them to successfully nest, and it's been successful in a lot of other areas. So we actually made, the Eagle Scout made 3 of these platforms and put them in 3 different parts of the lake. Because of insurance reasons and for the registration, the association actually gifted them to 3 members. I received one, Gary received one, and Dave Johnson received one. And then our insurance will cover it, and we had to go through the registration process with the county sheriff. So they're registered as swim platforms for all intents purposes. So here is what the loon raft looks like. This is Troop 159, which is the Lindstrom troop. This is Nolan. And this is what the loon raft looks like as it's in the water. Now, we didn't have any loons nest this year, unfortunately, but it's really common that it takes a couple years for them to get used to it and to accept it. Loons are also very territorial, so it's kind of unlikely that we'd actually ever have loons in all 3. If we kind of get 1 out of the 3, that would be pretty successful. So I kind of led this into the sheriff because the neat thing about this was we needed the sheriff's input for the registration. And so our main contact was Derrick Anklin, who's here tonight along with our sheriff. And he actually moved onto our lake. So he's also a Chisago-Lindstrom Lake Association member now, and he lives on the south end of Chisago. So he has one of these loon rafts near his house. So I'm going to flip over, and now they're going to talk a little bit about what the sheriff department does.
All right, good evening. For those that don't know me, I am Sheriff Brandon Thyen, Sheriff of the county. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 22 years. I want to thank you for inviting us out to your association meeting. As a sheriff, one of my initiatives is our public waters and our recreation. I realize how important our lakes and our water in the county are, not only to our residents, but our community as a whole. So thank you for having us out tonight. This is Captain Derrick Anklin. Derrick is our patrol captain with the Sheriff's Office. So he oversees our patrol division, which includes all of our deputies that work patrol on the road, as well as our deputies that are assigned to recreation, which would be boat and water patrol, as well as our lakes and trails, also snowmobile patrol and those types of things as well. So Derrick is the one that oversees all those deputies that work in all those different capacities. He also oversees our permits on the water as well. So, yeah. So one thing that we want to talk about is the Sheriff's Office function on the water. And per Minnesota Statute 86B 105, it's a sheriff safety program, and basically it states that the sheriff of each county shall maintain a program of search, rescue, buoying, marking, and patrol and removal of hazards on the lakes in reference to navigation, inspection of watercraft. And it talks some of those different things, but what it boils down to is the sheriff in each of the counties in Minnesota is responsible for all the water within the county. So a lot of you that live on the lakes probably are actually city residents. Your property is in the city. However, if there's an incident just off of shore in front of your residence, it's Sheriff's Office incident to respond to. We are responsible for all water investigations. That would even include incidents that might happen in a pool or anything like that. Our water patrol deputies would respond to those types of incidents. So that's one thing with the Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office, we patrol county-wide. We also have the 3 police departments in the county, being Wyoming Police, North Branch Police, and the Lakes Area Police Department. We have very good working relationships with our police departments, and we assist them and work together to respond to different incidents throughout the county. We also work a lot with our other public safety partners, being the 11 fire departments that are in the county. Several of those fire departments have different resources that we can use, such as Lindstrom has an airboat. We also work with the Stacy Lent dive team. They'll respond to water incidents as well, depending on the issues. And then we also, with having the St. Croix River, we also have a lot of response to the river and work with our agencies over there. So, what's that? Sure. So as far as some of the resources that we have, we currently have 3 boats. We had more boats in the recent past. But we decided to consolidate some of those resources to get newer boats and kind of move along the ones that we didn't maybe utilize as much. But we do always have a boat right in Center City. We typically have 2 in Harris. Sometimes those get moved around. We have a UTV and some other ATVs in Harris. We always have spare buoys, marking devices, and so forth like that. As far as deputies that are assigned to recreation within the Sheriff's Office, we have basically 1 full-time rec deputy. So back at the beginning of 2020, when myself and our admin team were looking at our resources that we had available for deputies to work patrol, work in the courthouse for court security, we also do that. And we looked at how we could get more resources into our recreation division. So we decided to add a full-time deputy just assigned to our recreation, which would be your water patrol, snowmobile patrol, and our trails in the county. And then we also have another deputy that is full-time. Half of his time is designated to recreation, and the other half of that time he is working with environmental services and zoning. We have a contract with them, and so half the time he's in rec and half the time he's working on with zoning on different types of zoning issues throughout the county. All of our deputies are water trained in boating and water rescue. So at any given time, if we have a water incident, any deputy that's working patrol, including myself, we've been trained, we've utilized and used our boats. We're boat certified in the state of Minnesota, and so they can respond to any type of incident. So on any given day, we have someone assigned to recreation every day of the year by utilizing these 1.5 time deputies positions to do that. We also secure several grant fundings from the state of Minnesota as well as through the state. Some of those funds come federal, and we utilize some of those funds to purchase equipment. Some of those equipment might be our lighted buoys that you might have recently seen that we put out. We also buy like anchor kits for buoys. We also buy boats and other equipment. And then the other portions of some of those funds we do utilize for extra patrol on the lake. So on the busy weekends, we will put other deputies out on overtime in other boats besides our normal deputies that are assigned to recreation. As you know, Chisago County is kind of known for how much water we have, the amount of bodies of water that we have. We have water up in the north end as well, being our bigger lakes, being Rush Lake, east and west up there, and then the Goose Lake chain up there. So we do have a lot of bodies of water to patrol, but we definitely have resources to do that.
So some of the stuff Dan asked us to talk about is just kind of some common questions we get, aside from the resources and what we have, but is, you know, what do we get from lake owners or people that use the lake? So we're going to kind of cover a little bit of that, and then if you guys have any questions at the end, we'll do our best to give you an accurate answer. But we get a lot of no-wake zone questions, and that is something that it's not just determined as far as, you know, can we just decide we're going to make this a no-wake zone today? Because everybody would love a no-wake zone in front of their dock. We get that. So environmental services, as well as the sheriff's office, look at that. There's actually county ordinance that ultimately it goes to the county commissioners to approve a no-wake zone when a new one is added or extended, with the heaviest input being from environmental services on there when we're looking at a no-wake zone, other than what's been pre-established. The main thing we're looking at is safety and erosion mitigation. So that is, as Sheriff just talked about, the lighted buoys, if everybody's seen that or not. If somebody is not abiding by a no-wake zone rule, you all live on the lake, you're all well aware there are two kinds of boaters. There's a weekend boater that's just showing up for the day and they're going to play on the lake and they might wreak havoc and we never see them again. Or there's somebody who lives on the lake and you recognize their boat and you're frustrated with them, but maybe you know them. So the best thing that you can do if there's that repetitive issue or there's that person that's ripping through the Shoquist Channel or doing something that's causing a big wake is to get out the binoculars and see if you can get a registration number on the boat. Relaying that to us is at least going to allow us the opportunity to do some follow-up and see if we can find that boat and again figure out if it's kids that are, you know, putting in and they live locally or if it's somebody that, you know, lives in, I don't know, somewhere far away and we're not going to see them again. We know it's a frustrating thing. You know, it's really hard to be in the right place at the right time on the lake, but we encourage people to call in and report that if you're seeing it happen because we can follow up quite a bit with a description of a boat and that registration number. We've all seen the no-wake buoys. These are some other buoys you might see a little bit on some of our lakes, with the most common one being a mooring buoy. I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. We've got a little bit of some submerged vegetation kind of by Paradise Park, but these are some of the other buoys you just might see around lakes within Chisago County, or if anybody's out ever cruising around with a dive buoy, that's what that one would look like. It's kind of hard to see, but it says stay 150 feet away. The other thing that we get a lot of calls about are jet skis or personal watercraft. So jet skis are unique to the boating world in that they have to be 150 feet offshore when they're at speed. When they're at idle, they don't have to be, but a jet ski can't go rip across your dock line or in front of your lift at full speed. And they also have to quit operating an hour before sunset. So a little bit unique with that not everybody knows about, so just something to keep in mind. Much the same if there's a repetitive issue with the jet ski, it's, I understand, harder to get a registration number on that. But if you're having a problem jet ski, description, a location, and or registration number really helps us. And if they're really close to shore, that's when we pay a little more attention to that. The primary concern being it's a lot harder for them to see a swimmer. If you've got people even in a kayak or on a lily pad or something swimming by a dock, it's a lot harder to see them on a jet ski that can go 50, 60 miles an hour than it is when you're operating a boat. And so that's kind of the main safety concern with those. Any jet ski specific questions while we're on this slide? The laws are a lot easier to read clearly from here, I understand, than there, but does anybody have any jet ski related questions? All right. So this one's the big one that we're taking county-wide, and that is wake surfing and the big old wakes that these boats cause. Right now, it is being looked at on the state level in regards to what can the state do to mitigate or put some kind of a rule or kind of work with the people that both want to wake surf and the lake owners that don't want tsunamis coming at their house, and trying to find that middle ground. The University of Minnesota right now has been kind of put as a point for a state task force to do some research on this, and they have to report to a panel of legislators by the end of the year with recommendations. They are doing some different kind of sensing and different measurements on Lake Minnetonka with various boats, and I don't know a ton of the depth of the study other than what has been relayed to the 87 counties in the state of Minnesota, which has been asked to be relayed to the lake associations, is while a specific ordinance can be put on a lake right now, their request is to wait until the end of this year, and they are going to push for state legislation, because when one lake puts it on right now, all it does is force more people onto a lake without an ordinance, and so on. But just understand that's being looked at the state level for what can be done for a middle ground. I can't attest to anything specific with the study. They may come back and say, they may bounce it right back to local lake associations and say, come up with your own ordinances. There's too many variables here. Or they may come up with some really specific guidelines. So more to come on that. I'm not sure if that's a topic for any of you guys or not, but that's something that is in the works. So they would follow the same rules as a water skier, essentially, in that right now there isn't a specific limit offshore, and that they would have to be done a half an hour after sunset. So while we're on wake surfing, any questions on that? What do you got?
Actually, going back to the jet ski.
Yep.
Is there a specific size lake that they have to utilize a jet ski?
They have to be 150 feet offshore to be up to speed. I don't know of any specific rules stating like a size to have a jet ski on. Do you have like a lake you're referencing, or?
Well, we live on Croon. It's a small
Okay.
lake, and there have been some jet skis this year. I'm more concerned about the loons on the lake.
So are they using the access, or do they live on the lake? The jet skis.
We don't know.
Okay.
They live on the lake. I don't know for sure though.
So, I mean, I guess I'm guessing it's younger kids, just a hunch. So usually it's education we start with, and we can kind of work with people, and they get it quite a bit. That's hard on a smaller lake like that, because it's, you're at one end of the lake to the other pretty quickly. And I know.
The concern is, with the loons floating and it's hard to see people swimming.
Yep.
The loon is even harder to see. We don't want to disturb them, I guess.
So there is state law regarding, like, you can't point your jet ski at any wildlife and floor it and go towards them. I mean, there's.
They happen on purpose. And
Sure.
That's not the concern. I think maybe just opportunity for education then.
We can chat more after, but if we can figure out who they are in kind of a non-confrontational way, that's usually the best. I know we don't end up on Croon a ton just because of population, but
Small lake compared to the other ones, it's with the jet ski.
yeah. But no, I don't know of anything specific that would prohibit anybody from being on a jet ski on Croon. Anything else on wake boats, other than understanding more to come on that eventually? So a little bit, just some of the other stuff that we do besides general patrol, we work with the county, with environmental services quite a bit on a state grant that they have for trying to mitigate aquatic invasive species. You'll see anybody from a Chisago County Sheriff's Office deputy, the DNR, or environmental services personnel that they've hired to be at the launches. Most weekends and even weekdays, the major launches are covered. And the big one in Chisago Lakes chain is the milfoil. With the, the real push is to have these boats dry and drained before they leave and before they come in. Our guys that work the accesses quite a bit will see people coming in with a drain plug still in from a different lake. So it's any variety of options. Sometimes they're telling them they can't launch. Sometimes they'll send them to a cleanup decon station if one is available. And other times they'll pull the plug out and they'll realize the boat hasn't been in the lake in 2 years. They just didn't know you can't drive with the plug in. So we are out there partaking with our partners in active enforcement in that. So if you see a deputy or somebody in uniforms just kind of hanging out at a launch on the weekend, that's probably what they're doing. Usually when our people do it, they'll bring a boat with them because if there's anything that pops up on the lake, they can launch quickly and go check it out. And sometimes it's just nice to have a little variety than hanging out at the launch for 6 hours. So we do two kind of permits with the county. Both are free, but one is for a swim area and one is for structures. There's state statute regarding a swim area and that it can't exceed 2,500 square feet or it can't exceed 50 linear feet along a shoreline. So you basically can go out 50 feet by 50 feet. The state statute on that is just so that people don't decide they're gonna have half-mile swim areas. There's some specific verbiage regarding buoys that would have to be put on there. A county permit for that is free. You can get to that on our webpage. Just by, if you Google Chisago County Sheriff's Office, you would click on the records and permits link and it would bring you to this fillable PDF, which is a little bit hard to see on this projector, but it's quite easy to do. Or you can stop into our office in Center City and we'll give you one. You have to provide a little map where you draw where your swim area would be, and then a proof of liability insurance that just either an umbrella or your homeowner's insurance that covers it. So if there was an accident in your swim area, some part of it would be covered. It's largely a formality, so we keep people within the left-right limits of how large the swim area can be. But those are available to anybody who owns lake property for free. We don't let people who don't own lake property claim swim areas. Yeah. Yep.
When you're anchoring and throwing swimmers in the water, is there a guideline for how far into the water you can be or should be?
So, no. I mean, state-wise, I mean, you think about your dock, you could have somebody 2/3 of the way into your dock area. I mean, they could anchor there. It would be kind of awkward. But they could do that. The boat has to be in the water. It has to be floating. Their ankles essentially have to be in the water. Once they're on dry land, they're in your property. But as long as they're in essentially navigational waters or floating water, they're in public property by being in the lake. So I know that becomes a contentious point with people who have sandbars or people who have nice beach in front of their house.
Well, on the converse side, it's people who anchor kind of in the middle of the lake.
Yep.
And drop swimmers in where it's more open and I think more dangerous. But there are guidelines.
No, you can anchor a float wherever you want in the middle of the lake and do swimmers as well. It's a big, large public park in the eyes of the state. So on the flip side from the swim area are structures or swim platforms, things like that. So again, you can have one out in front of your house. You can have a swim raft, a mooring buoy. You just have to have the left-right limits of the state statutes. Like Dan was talking about with the loon raft, when he called me this spring and explained what he had, I was trying to figure out what we would label it as because we don't have a checkbox for loon raft. So we call it a swim platform because that's essentially what it is, and that's just in regarding to making it not be a navigational hazard, having the proper buoy lights or buoys around it and reflectors on it if that's what it requires. A swim raft is just reflectors, and then some kind of registration on it. The main point in the registration number for us is that when they disappear in a storm, we can find who the owner is and give them back. It's all free. Yep. Yep. There's specific statute verbiage on what it is. I don't remember the exact number of feet. It is on the website. We're reasonable. I mean, they're put in there so that if we ever have huge issues, we can fall back on something. If you're trying to get out of a weed line, that's, are you going to plop it in the middle of South Center in the 135-foot hole? Probably not. Yeah. Yeah, so that's totally reasonable. It's the big thing with those is the registration number and the reflectors so that boats can see it at nighttime. We don't want it to be, in line with going to the access where a bass fisherman's getting out at 5 a.m. and doesn't see it. And so that's the limit of it. Yes, sir.
I didn't hear her question very well, but on a swim raft, you have to have it in your swim area.
It needs to be in, I don't remember the exact amount of feet in front of your house, but it has to be within, I believe it's possibly 300 feet of shore within your house. You can't just put it anywhere, but it needs to be, if you imagine your property lines going out indefinitely, it would need to be in the left-right limit of that.
Along that line, it's a little bit off the subject.
That's all right.
What's the ruling on your property line and people walking the shore, or is it, I've heard different things of saying, well, I've got right to anywhere, you only have property rights up to your high water mark into the property. In other words, I live close to the beach, very close to the beach.
So we occasionally deal with that too, with the ordinary high water mark is your property line ending. We don't treat it like that. The water's down right now. You have several more feet of yard you're probably mowing right now, or at least maintaining. That doesn't mean someone can just take a stroll along your property right there. If they're in the water, if their feet are in the water, there's little we can do about that. But we kind of use when they're on dry land, that's where we get involved. And we see that with the sandbars. The sandbar on the south end of Chisago Lake isn't as much of an issue because there aren't houses right there. South Center has one that we're probably working with those property owners every weekend. But we don't let people just walk around on dry land because they've decided they know where the high water mark is. There may be some specific statute that, we clarify that, but that's how we treat it anyway, and that's worked for us. And again, it boils down to a lot of education most of the time. So just falling back on the structures, the other thing that we've kind of recently come across is a mooring buoy. So you can have a mooring buoy in front of your property, and you can, the state statute on this is really open. It's essentially up to the sheriff whether or not you have one. It's this guy's decision right here. What we have decided is reasonable for our county is if you're going to have a mooring buoy, that's fine. But it, again, would need to fall in kind of the same parameters of a swim raft. And we would need to have the registration for the boat on file and then a nexus to that house. Are you renting out a slip on the lake publicly, or is it, your boat? Is it your friend's boat? So that's kind of a new thing. And what it's come down to is there's statute that says you can moor a sailboat wherever you want. Not a lot of people know that. We've had a few requests lately, more on the north end. We haven't had any down here, so we're not going to see random sailboats floating around. But that's kind of new for us. We've noticed with COVID, a ton of people bought boats. We've all seen it. The lakes are busier than they've ever been. And they're using them, and we're coming across a few new things that we haven't before, and that was one of them. So we're aware of that, and if you hear about that, that's the kind of reasonable standpoint we've took for now is if it's registered to that property, but maybe they don't have dock long enough because the water's down, or it's insured in their name that they can moor it in front of their house. Same deal, you have to meet the parameters that the state sets out for what the buoy looks like. Have to have reflectors on your boat so it's not hit at nighttime, or leave a light on all the time, and have it insured. So any structure, floating boat, any questions on that stuff? That's kind of the main things that we get quite a bit. We can do our best to answer any other lake questions you get. Like the sheriff said, we generally have a rec deputy on every weekend, and then usually another deputy with them, or in a different boat. You've probably seen some of our boats driving around. Our main focus with the sheriff's office is safety and navigation, where the DNR will focus a little more on fish and game type stuff. We focus more on the life jackets and nav lights and things like that, no wakes. So if you guys have any questions for us, otherwise that's what we got. So, all right.
All right, that was great. Thanks, guys. And is it true that you're doing muskrat eradication too? Is that? We can only hope, right? That's one of the good reasons for having the registration numbers on the swim platforms is we've had 2 of the lines for the loon rafts already get eaten through by muskrats and have them floating around. So, we need to get that trapper back. I wanted to talk a little bit about 2019, 2020, the COVID years. So we didn't charge any membership, and we didn't ask businesses to. Just we knew we weren't going to do much because the lake levels were high. We knew that we weren't going to do have to do AIS treatment other than Phragmites. So and our budget was in pretty good shape. So we decided just to carry the year over. We did try to encourage people to sign up who were maybe reticent to pay the fee, and we got a few people who did that. We did do some activities, though. We did do an ice cleanup. We got the loon raft project going. We did do Phragmites mitigation, and we continue to do AIS detection, which is mostly looking for curly leaf and milfoil. We basically, instead of having our election, we just carried our officers over, which is why we have 4 open. All of our officer positions are actually open tonight. And then talking about this year a little bit, now that hopefully we're through COVID, we're going back to asking people to pay membership fees and talk to businesses about having business sponsors again. We want to thank Anderson Ice Cream for their contribution, Lindstrom Hardware, who gave us the discounts for materials for the loon rafts. And then we did do, or planning to do, our ice cleanup. The loon rafts were deployed. Phragmites mitigation, AIS detection mitigation. We had our 4th of July parade, which was a lot of fun this year. We're doing moonlight flotillas, which is just everyone getting together on their boats on the lakes. We're doing a Memorial Day and Labor Day paddle. Memorial Day one obviously already happened. And Craig and I are going to be walking in the Chisago Day parade. And anyone who wants to join us is welcome. And as I mentioned, all of the elected offices are open, and we really need volunteers who want to be active in doing some of this stuff. We'll have the election.
This lake association has been treating invasive species for the last 7 years, which is kind of it's a record for us. We do need AIS lake inspectors on Croon Lake, Chisago Lake. We have some information on what to look for. There's training available. Everybody would, I for one, there's a bunch of people who would be ready to help. We don't have eyes all over, and we're not on the water all the different areas. So the more people can be out on the water and say, hey, even if it's a matter of what's this weed over here, it seems to be taking over, that would be helpful. What we've been treating is curly leaf pondweed and Eurasian milfoil, which are 2 invasives. We didn't do any treating this year, again, because of the we used to have high water, and that kind of kept the weeds hidden. This year is a different story. What we end up having to do is doing the inspections for this year for treatment next year. So last year we had high water, and we did the inspections and we couldn't see any weeds. And this year we had no snow, and we're in this situation. So we're going to have to be doing a lot of inspections yet this year and planning for treatment for next year. Phragmites, we have been treating the last 2 years. We've got some information on what those weeds are. They're fairly nasty. They grow 12 feet high. They get real thick and dense. They'll take over the whole ecosystem. We've seen them here, and we're trying to eradicate them. We have a chance.
Zebra mussels were part of the countywide identification, and we will have more information on that. And thankfully, we don't have any here yet. Oh, say the Phragmites, I don't know if you can see the map of the lakes. Each of the little red dots is a sighting. Some of those sightings have up to 7 stands within that area. So this is kind of a map of the problem that we have. Thankfully, Croon, we have not seen any Phragmites on Croon Lake yet. You know, where it all came from is a good story. You know, so we treated, this is our 3rd year. We've treated 1 year. Last year, we found new stands. Some of the treated stands were knocked down good. Some of them are still resilient. And this year, you're starting to see the Phragmites grow up above the cattails. It's a little different color, so you can spot them easy. And what we need to do is update this map, present the data to the DNR, get our permits, and we get the contractors out. They hit it for a day or two, and then we talk with we provide the information to the county, and we get reimbursed for it, so it works out. There's identification guides around here, so if you want, you can grab an identification guide. Once you know what they look like, you see them all over. It's real wonderful that way. You know, wherever we go, oh, there's more, there's more. It's really nasty. The zebra mussel program, this is a zebra mussel detector. Some of you have them on your dock. This is run through the county, and basically you inspect them to see if the zebra mussels like to land on those hard surfaces. You can see them, and it works really good. There's contact information for Susanna. She wasn't able to make it here today. And also the Vellagers, which is a early version of a zebra mussel. You know, Jerry does sampling on those in the right time of the year to see. So that's kind of an early detection. If you see the zebra mussels on the samplers, you've got a problem. But the Vellagers, you may have a chance. So that's kind of some of the stuff that we've got going. And are there any questions for aquatic invasive species? Anybody interested in learning what they are? We can head out on the boat, and right now the curly leaf pondweed is pretty much dead. It's that stuff that mats up around the 4th of July and turns really disgusting and turns the lake kind of green. And so thankfully it's gone now. The Eurasian milfoil is coming on strong, and to be able to see Phragmites is really key, because if you can spot it, then we get it on the treatment list, and it won't take over, because on Croon it could be devastating. Well, the machines are a good idea if you want to make a channel, but for eradication, you're really going the wrong way. Eurasian milfoil propagates through fragments. So if you chop, you're going to leave fragments that are going to float around and create new plants. The Lake Improvement District will treat areas, we'll go inspect, and we'll find areas. They have to be 150 feet from shore, and that can get treated. And the issue there is if it's a mixture of native and invasives, it can't be treated. Now, if you want to make like a navigation channel from my dock to the main part of the lake and it's choked out with weeds, you can do that also. The Lake Association can help you. It's a $35 permit from the DNR, and it's a fairly simple thing to do. It's again a shoreline thing, so it's not a Lake Improvement District's program. But in that case, for a channel, you can treat both native and invasives to get an access. You can treat general areas or you can make a channel. Those are the two permits that are available.
So, Gary, one of the questions, though, was about what kind of inspection we do for Croon Lake.
Well, we live on Chisago's. We live on Chisago, and we have friends on Croon. So when they're nice enough to invite us along on the boat ride, or if they see, they brought us out this year because there was a lot of weeds. And it goes back into, you know, we do the inspections now for treatment next year. For curly leaf pondweed, you treat in spring, it's dead already now. So, you know, Eurasian milfoil, we'll watch it, and probably in August it'll be in its peak. And then we can see the areas, and we'll get that and go through the permit process during the winter, and then treatment in June.
And just to kind of clarify, what the association has really focused on is making sure that we have navigation available on the lakes, right? So the areas and we really can't do individual homeowners' properties out 150 feet. So the areas we always kind of focus on are the main channel by the boat launch, right? This area, years ago when we were very low, people couldn't even navigate through here. And so we did some treatment here. And then, like, the association helped, because I live in this area, and all of my neighbors and I, John Arrett, who lives around here, kind of spearheaded it. We all got together and applied for a permit together for treatment along our properties because we had such a large weed problem. And that, you know, it cost a little bit less than because it was a larger area, and it was one permit, so the permit fee was shared by all of us. So yeah, so you can do something like that with your neighbors too, potentially. We haven't had to do, at least my recollection is we haven't had to do much treatment on Croon, but you know, things are always kind of changing on our lakes. It's one of the nature of our lakes. The other area we've always had to kind of look at is where the old pavilion was, because the weeds in that area can be really bad. So we always kind of make sure that. So that's the historical. Then we've done treatments on the Highway 8 bridge, and that's historically been reimbursed from City of Lindstrom. And then we're in discussions now about treatments in the northern channel, that area between North Lindstrom and North Center. And so Jerry is here from the LID to talk a little bit more about all of this. Oh, I wanted to mention on the zebra mussel platform, this is the first year we actually have these at Lon's Landing, which is just to the south of the boat launch, and Captain Sean has one at his just north of the boat launch. So we feel pretty good that we're kind of covering what is the most active part, and that is the most active. It's definitely the most active launch in Chisago County. I think it's one of the most active launches in the whole state. Is that, do you know? Yeah. All right. So here, Jerry.
Thank you. Again, my name's Jerry Spetzman. I'm the administrator of the Chisago Lakes Lake Improvement District, and it's a pleasure to be here. Just to maybe answer that last question quick, the Chisago-Lindstrom boat launch is second to the main boat launch on Forest Lake. That's the one right downtown Forest Lake. That has more boats going in, but Chisago-Lindstrom Lake launch is second to that one. I'm going to cover a few things, lake levels, talk a little bit about the channel between North Center and North Lindstrom, some water quality improvement projects, the lake water quality monitoring, how the lakes are doing water quality wise, and follow up a little bit with aquatic invasive species. Talk a little bit about the Chisago Lakes Lake Improvement District. The mission is to restore, preserve, protect, and enhance the water resources of the Chisago Lakes Chain of Lakes watershed. And this map here shows the watershed area of the Lake Improvement District. It includes the cities of Center City, Lindstrom, Chisago City, several parts of adjacent townships, a little bit into Schaefer. There's about 20 lakes in the Lake Improvement District and about 14,000 residents in this area. And again, we work with about 20 different lakes, and we have really excellent working relationships with 3 lake associations. The one is the Center Lakes which is those right there, Chisago-Lindstrom Croon Lake Association and the Green Lake Association. And then there's a 7-member board of directors that oversees the lake or the Lake Improvement District. For your area, Area 3, which is the, let's see, area up here, your representative is Meg Levasseur. I don't think she's here tonight. Steve Piquet, who is just up here, represents Area 4, and Gary Schumacher is an at-large member. There's 5 area members and then 2 at-large. And then the chair of the LID board is Mike Mergens. He's sitting back there. So you have 3 members of the board in the room right now. Okay, first off, lake levels. This is a picture from 1986, and those houses right here, that's the channel between Chisago and South Lindstrom. That's the houses being flooded. And that's kind of the peak in the recent history of water levels in this area is 1986. And that's when the Lake Improvement District really got started. Because of the high water and the flooding in that year, the Lake Improvement District installed a series of channels and weirs that lower lake levels during high water conditions. They don't do anything during low water conditions, but the idea of the channels and weirs is to prevent this kind of flooding from happening in the future. And so as part of the channel and weir system, we have an operation and maintenance plan. And part of the plan is to monitor lake levels once a week throughout the growing season. And so we have a series of 15 lake gauges throughout the whole Lake Improvement District area. Pretty much all the lakes are monitored for lake levels. And again, we do that once a week during the growing season. And so this is, the basic chart is 2020, last year's lake levels. And work through this. The red line is the ordinary high water level. That's 900.2 feet above sea level. And then the beginning of last year, spring of 2020, we were about a little bit about a foot below ordinary high. And if you recall, you could probably get your pontoons through the channel pretty readily and whatnot. During the course of the year, the water levels dropped about a foot and a half. And if you recall last fall, it was pretty difficult to get a boat through the channel. You can get some kayaks and canoes through pretty readily, but toward the end of the year, we were seeing lots of pontoon boats getting stuck. And then as of last week, we're down about another half a foot from low of last year. And I would suggest that you pretty much can't get a pontoon boat through there anymore this year. So. Or I even saw a kayaker get stuck a couple weeks ago. So, okay, this map this graph shows historic water levels, and it's kind of a snapshot in time. This is about 1960 right here, and this is about 2010. So it's a 50-year span of time, and so it shows the ordinary high. And then this is today's lake levels, or actually last week's lake levels. The last 2 years, the lake levels were kind of right in this range right here. And if you look historically, right now you can't get a boat through. A foot higher, you could get a boat through. So there's peak years when you can get navigation through, but it's certainly not every year. I would suggest that it's maybe 3 years out of 10 you can get a boat through pretty readily. But if you look at all the other years, like below this line, there's a lot of time when you can't get a boat through. And if you compare, like if you think, well, the water's low today, or if you think the water's high, at this point right here, that's about 5 feet higher than the water is today. And at this point here, it's 11 feet lower than the water is today. So we're not even close to bottom. We're actually, even though you think the waters are low today, if you look at the whole thing, we're actually kind of in the upper half of lake level elevations right now. So, and then talking a little bit about the channel between North Center and North Lindstrom. In 2019, it was the first time you can get the boats through in many, many years. There's two reasons for that. One is we had high enough water to get the boats through. And then another important reason is the new bridge that was installed on County Road 20. That was put in 2018. Prior to that, the bottom of the bridge was so low that if the water came up, you couldn't get a boat underneath it. It stopped any navigation. So I would suggest it's been decades since prior to the last couple of years that boats could get through the channel. And now the bottom elevation of the bridge is 6.5 feet over ordinary high. So when you have high water conditions, you can still get a pontoon through with the canopy down. So that was a major thing. So, you know, in the future, as the water comes up again, you'll be able to get boats through pretty readily. So the first time you can get through is 2019, and then we realized at that time there was a lot of bogs and things in the channel that we never really considered before. And so in 2020, we did a major project to remove a 30-foot wide stretch of bogs in this channel line right here. We got it mostly done last year, and then this spring we finished it up. So there's, again, a 30-foot wide channel area that you can get boats through under high water conditions. And I anticipate that over the next several years we'll keep the channel open. We'll do maintenance to make sure that it doesn't plug up again. There's no plans for dredging the channel. The reason for that is under low water conditions, say we dredge the channel, you know, a couple feet deep or whatever, under low water conditions when everything gets low, Chisago Lakes gets lower than the North and South Center Lakes, and in effect we'd be lowering the lake levels of North and South Center Lakes. So that's, unless we can get 100% of landowner approval on North and South Center Lakes, you can't do it, and it wouldn't be permitted by the DNR. So there's no plans for dredging, but widening or improving the channel, I would say, is likely. We're working with some of the neighbors on that right now to get the necessary easements and things. So improving the channel right in that area, I would say, is likely. And actually, if the water levels continue to go down, that would be a good time for a project. You know, it's easier to do work when it's low. So I'd say it's likely, but it's not for sure at all yet. Some more pictures of the machine going through. And then we've also been doing a lot of work on water quality, improving the water quality of the lakes in the area. The Chisago Soil and Water Conservation District has been really excellent in obtaining grant funds and doing projects in the Lake Improvement District area. Several $1 million worth of projects have gone into place. And what's good about this is we can get state funds, and then there's always a match requirement, and the Lake Improvement District pays the match requirement, so the cost to homeowners is normally zero to have these things installed in their properties. I'll show you just a few examples, but there's lots of them going on in the area. This is a Maple Street Gully Stabilization project. This is on North Lindstrom Lake along Maple Street is on the east side of the lake. It drains into it. And so they did a project to stabilize the gully area, but in addition to that, they worked up in the watershed area also. There's a large watershed area that drains through the gully, and so a lot of like rain gardens and things were installed up in the city of Lindstrom to reduce the amount of water flowing through the gully into the lake. This is another one. This is on Croon Lake. This is on the north end of Croon Lake. It's basically a farm area, and there's a thing called a WASCOB. It's a water and sediment control basin. It's basically a way to slow down water going into the lake so the sediments and pollutants settle out before they go into Croon Lake and other areas. They also installed grass waterways and diversions. So this is just an example of something on Croon Lake. The city of Lindstrom has adopted an enhanced street sweeping program, and basically storm drains, all the storm drains eventually lead to a lake or river nearby, and so all the stuff and gunk on the streets, when it rains heavy, goes into the storm drains, into the lakes and rivers. And so the city of Lindstrom does a lot more street sweeping than is required. So they go through, clean up all the gunk on the street so it doesn't eventually wash into the lake and river. And that has kept tons and tons of sediment out of the lakes because they actually measure how much is collected. Lawns to legumes, this is another program that just tries to convert turfgrass lawns into butterfly habitat. And if this is something anyone's interested in, I know the Chisago Croon Lake is kind of areas where they're targeting right now. So it's a good program. You can get assistance with planting a whole bunch of like natives and whatnot to help butterflies and whatnot. And then working with the farmers, they're doing a lot of work with cover crops in the winter so that you don't have a lot of just open fields during the winter. You put cover crops in, and so there's financial assistance to farmers to install those. So I just gave you a few examples, but there's lots and lots in the Lake Improvement District area of this kind of stuff going on. So what does that mean for our lakes? We have a water quality monitoring program, and basically we go to 22 sites throughout the Lake Improvement District area. It's once a month, May through September, and we monitor for a whole bunch of things: chlorophyll, color, invasive plants, phosphorus, a whole bunch of stuff. We have 14 sites that staff go to, and then we're fortunate to have 8 volunteers at the lakes where we don't have public water access at some of the smaller lakes. And this chart is a little tough to see, but the gist of it is lower is better, higher is not. And so these are all the lakes in the county. You can't see the names, but it's all the lakes in the county from highest water quality, low is good, to poorest water quality. And by the way, you can't see this, but everything I'm presenting is on our website. So anything you want to find out and more is on the Lake Improvement District website. So the lakes that are up here, this would be like lakes in the middle of a cornfield out west, and the lower it is more like Boundary Waters lakes. And you can see there's a progression through the county of higher quality lakes and lower to lower quality lakes. You can't read it, but Croon is now 3rd best in the county for water quality. And then North Lindstrom is right behind it at 4th best. And there's changes every year, so Croon isn't always 3rd, but they're relatively about the same every year. So you have Croon here, North Lindstrom here, South Lindstrom here, the north end of Chisago here, and the south end of Chisago here. So basically all the lakes in your lake association are in the top half of water quality for the county. And then these are trend lines. So it starts out 2011 to 2020. And for example, if you look at the yellow line, it goes up and down and up and down and up and down. But basically you form a trend over time. So, but with this you can form trends. And for Croon Lake, in 2011, the Croon Lake is the red line. And so you can see it going down, so the water quality on Croon is improving over time. And then North Lindstrom is the yellow. A little tough to see, but again, it's improving over time. So the water quality on Croon and North Lindstrom are improving over time. And then here's some more of the lakes. South Lindstrom is yellow. Again, it's improving over time. Chisago North is the green, improving over time. And Chisago South, the red, improving over time. 100% of the lakes where we have water quality monitoring trend data are showing improvements, 100% of the lakes. And I would suggest that Chisago South is one of the more improved ones over time. I remember when we first went out there, the water quality was not ideal, but more and more it's becoming similar to South Lindstrom and some of the other areas. So they're all, I'll back up here. So you have a range of 70 to 40. We're ending up in the 50s around here on some of these lakes. And again, we're ending up around the 50s here. So they're all kind of converging to good water quality. There's 2 lakes, North and South Center, that were on what's called the impaired waters list, and they're now off the impaired waters list. they're on a similar trend line. It wouldn't surprise me if they were taken off the list in the next few years. A little bit following up on the previous aquatic invasive species discussion. Carp tend to breed in shallow areas where they don't have sunfish predation. They tend to go to areas where they're kind of protected to spawn, and then they go back out into the lake. There's two primary areas that were identified in the Lake Improvement District as carp spawning habitat, and one is Croon Lake. The small channel between Chisago and Croon is a pathway for carp to go and spawn. And then there's the area on Lake Ellen, which is north of Highway 8, north of Little Green Lakes. And so primarily Gary installed carp barrier fence. It's on the west side of Croon Lake on that channel area. And basically what it does is it prevents the carp from going through and spawning. And so it doesn't doesn't do anything to the existing carp in the lakes, but it helps reduce an age class by reducing the spawning potential. And then also the Green Lake Association put a barrier. It's actually under Highway 8. There's two culverts under Highway 8. They blocked those for carp to prevent them going into Lake Ellen and spawning. Aquatic invasive species treatment, we touched on this earlier. The Lake Improvement District provides funding to each of the lake associations to control curly-leaf pondweed, Eurasian water milfoil, and we started funding for Phragmites in 2019. The lake associations are doing an amazing job on the lake shores, and we hope to start treating non-lakeshore properties like roadside right-of-ways this coming fall. Another thing we've been doing is aquatic plant point intercept surveys, and basically what that is a survey of the plants in the lake. This is a picture of Chisago Lake, and basically we set up a grid across the lake, and we go to each point on the grid and throw out a rake and test and see what kind of aquatic plants there are. And you do this on the entire lake, and you can develop a thing called a floristic quality index, basically the health of the plant community in the area. And so we've surveyed Croon, was surveyed by the DNR in 2017, Chisago Lake was 2018, North Lindstrom was 2019, and we're planning to do South Lindstrom in a few weeks. The map on the right is it's a map showing coontail, but it just shows the locations of coontail in the lake, and then the larger the dots, the more growth there is in that specific area. And again, all these are on the LID website. You can see all the information and get a lot more. And then we also do the Watercraft inspection program. We have inspectors at 24 accesses, including the Forest Lake. We provide inspections within the Comfort Lake, Forest Lake Watershed District, Forest Lake area, and all these other areas. And the question was earlier, how busy is Chisago-Lindstrom boat access? These are the number of inspections per access in 2020. The first one is Forest West. This is the main access, downtown Forest Lake on Forest Lake. But Chisago-Lindstrom, we did almost 5,000 inspections last year. And there's a lot of hours when there are not inspectors on site. But yeah, Chisago-Lindstrom is the second busiest access in our system here. Another thing we do is we do Vellager monitoring and Spiny water flea monitoring. And again, the Vellagers are like the baby zebra mussels. And we go out to the lakes and take a sample and see if the Vellagers are there. The prime time for doing that is right around 4th of July. That's when the Vellagers are most active. And so we went to a whole bunch of lakes, including Croon and South Lindstrom. We didn't monitor like South Lindstrom, North Lindstrom, Chisago. We just monitor one in the area, which is representative of all three lakes. And so far, we have no new infestations of spiny water flea or zebra mussels in the area. The closest lake with zebra mussels is Comfort Lake, which is in Chisago County. Forest Lake has them too, but none of the lakes so far in our system have it. And then Gary talked about the Zebra Mussel Watch program, where volunteers put discs out in front of their docks to watch for zebra mussels, and it's an early detection thing. And we have volunteers on all of the lakes in the association doing it. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jerry. That's great. All right, we're almost done. It's a lot of good information. I know we're going a little bit long, so now we're just going to kind of wrap things up. I just wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of things we did. We had the 4th of July parade, which was a lot of fun this year. Something new we tried to do was have a People's Choice Award, so we allowed people to vote for their favorite on Facebook. And so this boat of adorable kids actually took that prize, and I gave them the President's Prize as well. So that was a good time. I hope everyone was able to make it out there. I think we had about 30 boats participating this year. We're doing flotillas. We've already had 2, and then the next one is coming up on August 22nd, which is a Sunday. It's the Sunday of the Chisago weekend activities. So then that's just come on out on your boat and just meet your neighbors, or just kind of float, bring some snacks maybe. And then we're going to try and do our Labor Day paddle, although a little concerned that we might not even be able to get through the area. We start in Paradise, and we go up through North Lindstrom, through the channel into North Center, and then stop down by the Grumpy Minnow. So we hope to do that, and hope anyone that's into paddling will join us. All right, so now here's the last slide. This is the election of officers. But first, I need to just mention that this meeting, for Phragmites, we have to have notify the public of a couple of things to conform with the requirements, because we plan on doing a treatment. So this is considered a public meeting for Phragmites treatment, where we're notifying people that we plan to do Phragmites treatment on the lakes. And if anyone has an objection, you can say you object now or write us a letter. We'll also have a notice in the paper. So law only requires 1 notification. We usually try to do at least 2. And so I just wanted to get that out of the way. So Mary Kay Ripp, who's married to Gary Schumacher, has been very active in the association for a number of years. She was our president for a number of years and has been the secretary for a number of years and treasurer for a number of years. And she continues to do lots of work on AIS and leads our paddles. And she is not going to continue on being secretary. So I just want to give you the certificate of appreciation and thank you for all your service. Thank you. Thank you, Mary Kay. Just fantastic. So anyways, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you coming out tonight.